Academia is a very particular environment, and you're only surrounded by those of who also share your opinions on the whole, or are already unified in the belief that what you're studying is valuable, and you only really get to test the mettle of that when you go and talk to somebody else.
It's important that all aspects of society are involved in the discussions around genome editing. Not just those people who maybe are switched on to science already and already have those kind of views that may be very similar to what the researchers have, but it's important to get that kind of wide demographic of different people from different backgrounds with different perspectives on these topics.
I really think actually talking to the people who you most think would be a hard sell audience are the most valuable people to talk to, because they're the ones who have a different opinion to yours, and it's just that harder a debate, and it's important to go to those kinds of people and to both find out why it is that what they think, and also to give the knowledge that we have as scientists on the technology in particular to those people. And I think it's really important to have that kind of engagement, because they produce different kinds of outcomes in society that are very different and diverse to our outputs as scientists, but just as valuable, and no one should shy away from those kinds of conversations on account of fear or apprehension. I think on the whole, most people are interested in learning, and especially when it comes to learning about what it is that makes them who they are, and how a technology might be coming to the shelves soon that might change that. Everyone has an opinion about that, and so you can actually talk to anyone you want to about this stuff, at least in my experience.
In terms of the research that we do at Rothamsted, I mean, obviously we're sort of focused on trying ultimately to deliver to farmers. So for example, certainly we'd want to talk to farming groups, and we could do that in a number of different ways. Either, for example, we go to things like the cereals event, which is a big sort of trade show that happens every couple of years, and similar sort of activities. Or you can do much more focused things where you actually invite them to come to the institute to learn about things.
I will talk to absolutely anybody about this. I guess the first selection hurdle is anyone who wants to talk about it. So I've started making a conscious effort to sort of raise it in conversations with people who might seem somewhat unlikely to have come across it. And I often ask, have you heard about this? And if they have, then you can have a conversation. If they haven't, I always take the opportunity to raise it. For me anyway, I think this is something that's really, really, really important to talk about in general. And I think it's just a good way of getting anyone to think about life and society, actually, never mind the ins and outs of the technology itself. Do I think that there's particular audiences that need to hear about this more? Well, frankly, everybody needs to hear about it, and everyone should have the right to understand what the technology means, and to have a space in which they can form their own opinion. There's often selection. I mean, I get asked to go to a lot of public debates, actually sort of panel debates more often than not. But of course, anyone who's paying to attend something like that is already pretty much interested. So I understand that that's a selection bias there as well. Basically more for all.
So why it is very important to engage the public with genome editing and genome editing research is in order to share different views from different people. So for example, we organize an event for Cambridge Science Festival this year in which we invite experts from different fields in genome editing and to share their views with the public, and the public could ask questions and engage in discussions with them. What we found out during these kind of events is that actually the researchers learn a lot from the public and the discussions with them, and they share those different viewpoints, and it opens their eyes, and then they go back to their labs thinking about those conversations. In terms of who we should engage with genome editing, I would say that is everybody, because any development or any applications that come with genome editing will be there for the whole society. But equally, any risk that might come with the development of those applications, we will also be exposed, all of us, to it. So it is very important that we all engage in this discussion, and we do not leave these decisions and this debate only to politicians, scientists, decision makers, and so on. We have to make sure that we all define the future we want to live in.
If we think about what those issues might mean for public engagement, we can imagine various different challenges. We can imagine some sort of downstream conversations that need to take place in particular areas about, for example, what concerns might be in terms of agriculture and the development of new crops and livestock and things like that. And we can imagine downstream conversations that need to take place in the clinic with clinicians or with researchers running clinical trials, that sort of thing. But I don't think we're at that stage yet. I think actually what we need to engage in is a sort of more open-ended upstream conversation about, where might this technology take us? What worlds might it enable? And is that a world that's universally held up as an ideal? If people disagree with the imagined future, then what choices do they have to opt out of it? Those sort of big political discussions are the sort of discussions that, they will happen anyway around new technologies. They always do. But I would like to see the scientists involved in those discussions and helping to lead the way without presuming to know the answers.
It's important that any public engagement work happens where the public are, so not just in institutions like universities and academic research institutes, but also happen where people naturally gather and are. So it's important that any engagement happens in those spaces as well, because that way you're going to reach out a wider demographic of people and get as many different viewpoints on genome editing as possible.
I guess this is where to engage the public is much more flexible question. I would say you have to adapt it to the audience you're trying to reach. So whether you find them in a leisure center or in a research institute or in a House of Parliament, it really depends with whom you're trying to talk.
So when you're thinking about the audience to engage with, I think sort of one key one from my point of view is actually the patient groups or the groups that benefit from what's going on, because they actually would provide a public face for the benefits of what we're doing, because often it's I think seen as the scientists being against the rest of the world, and actually having somebody who's benefited from the research tell the public about their experience of that, I think can be very, very valuable.
From school kids all the way up to sort of people who've got specialist interests. Now the messages that you need to give to them are going to be quite different. And therefore you need, again, I think it's really critical to have a good, coherent communication strategy that says, okay, well, these are the tools that we'll use for talking to school kids, and and these are the tools we use for talking to expert interests or people with a particular sort of ultimate need for the technology. So you need to have. I think the trick is to have people, science communication professionals, enabling the scientists to tell their story in a way that is ultimately going to be sort of acceptable and useful to that particular audience.